Imagine being 16 years old, completely alone in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. No land in any direction, no rescue coming, and the only thing sharing the tiny boat keeping you alive is a 450-pound Bengal tiger who hasn't eaten in days. This is the story of Pi Patel, a boy who survived something almost no human being ever could. And by the end, his story is going to make you question what you believe about faith, survival, and the lies we tell ourselves just to keep going. Stick with me, because this one gets darker than you'd expect. At the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to a massive cargo ship cutting across the Pacific in the dead of night. Below deck, families and animals are sleeping, unaware of what's building outside. The sky is turning angry, the waves are climbing, and the wind is picking up in a way that should terrify anyone who understands what it means. But 16-year-old Pi, he's standing out on the open deck, soaking every second of it in. While the rest of the world runs from the storm, Pi walks straight toward it, and then the alarms go off. Emergency lights flood the deck. A wall of water the size of a building crashes over the front of the ship and drags several sailors straight into the black water below. Just like that, Pi's wonder turns to pure terror. The ship is going down. He sprints back inside, screaming for his family. His mother, his father, and his older brother Ravi, all somewhere below. But the lower decks are already flooding fast, the corridors turning into underwater tunnels. And here's a detail you need to know. Pi's family owns a zoo, and they're transporting all their animals on this exact ship. So as Pi fights through that flooded hallway, terrified zoo animals are being swept past him in the rushing water. Total chaos. He pushes forward with everything he has, but the ocean is stronger than any 16-year-old. The current throws him back onto the deck, where animals run loose. Crew members shout in languages nobody understands, and the ship leans further into the sea by the second. Pi begs a crew member to save his family, but the sailors already know the truth. Pi won't accept. There's no time. One officer forces a life jacket over his head and shoves him toward a lifeboat. Pi fights. He pleads one last time. They throw him overboard anyway. He crashes down onto the lifeboat, and that's when something insane happens. A zebra, screaming with fear, leaps off the sinking ship and slams into the back of the boat so hard it splits a wooden bench in half. The impact drops the whole thing into the ocean, flipping it upside down before it rolls back upright. Pi is soaked, shaking, and suddenly alone. Behind him, the cargo ship groans one final time. Its lights glow beneath the surface for a few seconds, and then go dark forever. His mother, his father, his brother, everyone he ever loved, gone in an instant. But grief has to wait, because something is moving in the water. Pi spots a figure struggling in the waves and hurls out a ring buoy on a rope, dragging it closer with everything he has. And then he sees exactly what he's saved. It's Richard Parker. The full-grown Bengal tiger from his family's zoo is paddling straight toward the lifeboat, and Pi just helped him get there. Panic takes over. Pi grabs an oar and shoves it at the tiger, screaming at him to stay back. But Richard Parker reaches the boat anyway. And in that split second, Pi makes a decision most people would call insane. Rather than share a lifeboat with a tiger, he throws himself back into the raging ocean. Underwater, everything goes silent. Strange fish dart past. Lightning pulses above. And then a massive shark glides right by him. The message is brutal. Out here, the water will kill him just as dead as the tiger will. Pi claws back to the surface and hauls himself onto the far end of the boat, as far from Richard Parker as he can get. He is now truly alone in the Pacific, with a tiger, and his nightmare is only just beginning. When morning breaks, Pi realizes he's not as alone as he thought, and somehow that's worse. The injured zebra is still there. Then something shifts under the orange tarp, and a spotted hyena crawls out. And just when it can't get stranger, a cry drifts across the water. Floating toward the boat on a raft of bananas is orange juice, the zoo's orangutan, exhausted but alive. For one brief, almost miraculous moment, there are 4 survivors. And for just a second, Pi lets himself believe the worst is over. He could not be more wrong. As the tranquilizers wear off, the hyena turns vicious. It attacks the helpless zebra while the animal is still alive. Pi watching in horror, unable to stop it or look away. By the next morning, the hyena isn't finished. It turns on orange juice. She rises up, screaming, fighting back. And for 1 second, you believe she might win. But the fight is over in seconds. She's gone. Now only Pi and the hyena remain. And Pi is next. But then the tarp explodes outward. Richard Parker launches across the boat with terrifying speed and crashes into the hyena. One swipe, one bite, silence. And just like that, the lifeboat belongs entirely to the tiger. And the full, brutal truth lands on Pi. He isn't just stranded in the Pacific. He's stranded on a tiny boat with a Bengal tiger who just showed him exactly what he's capable of. Sooner or later, that tiger is going to remember Pi is still there. Most people would give up. Pi doesn't. He raids the emergency kit and finds the boat is packed with rations, fresh water, and tools. Then he ties together life jackets, oars, and rope into a crude raft and pushes himself a few feet off the boat, just enough distance to stay alive. It's not safe. One wrong move sends him into shark-infested water, but it beats the alternative. And here's what makes Pi remarkable. He starts thinking strategically. He realizes Richard Parker needs him. Without Pi managing the food and water, the tiger starves. So instead of just hiding, Pi makes a decision that sounds unhinged. He decides to train the tiger. Using an emergency whistle, he builds a system. Every time Richard Parker gets aggressive, Pi blows a sharp blast and rocks the boat, teaching the tiger to link that sound with discomfort. At first, Richard Parker answers with roars that shake Pi to his bones, but he refuses to quit. Whistle, rock, wait, repeat, and slowly, impossibly slowly, something shifts. The tiger stops seeing Pi as prey. He's not friendly, not tame, but he learns the boy is something else, something necessary. Because the truth is terrifyingly simple. Without the boat, Pi dies. Without Pi, the tiger dies too. Meanwhile, the ocean keeps trying to kill them both. The sun blisters Pi's skin by day. The wind cuts through him by night. His body wastes away. And then comes the hunger. The rations run out, and Pi has to fish, which leads to one of the most quietly devastating moments in the film. Pi has been a vegetarian his whole life. He's never killed anything. So when he finally reels in his first catch, thrashing and gasping for life, he freezes. He cries, genuinely cries, before he kills it, because hunger doesn't care about your values. He even apologizes to the fish before he eats it. But watch how clever he becomes. Richard Parker smells the fresh fish and growls, and Pi realizes something huge. Food is power. If the tiger depends on him for meals, he's less likely to see Pi as one. So now the boy controls the tiger 3 ways, with the whistle, the boat, and food. As weeks pass, Pi gets better. He learns to fish. He collects rainwater like liquid gold. The terrified boy who once depended on his parents transforms into a genuine survivor. The ocean even throws them surreal moments. A storm of flying fish exploding from the water, boy and tiger hunting side by side, a massive whale erupting beside the boat, reminding Pi how impossibly small he really is. And still, the fragile truce holds. But Pi never lets his guard down, because one mistake could still end his life. Then, one afternoon, he sees a ship on the horizon. He fires flares. He waves. He screams until his voice gives out. But the ship never slows, never turns. It slides over the horizon without anyone noticing the desperate boy below. Pi doesn't cry this time. He just sits down with the emptiness of someone whose best hope was borrowed and handed back broken. But he gets up the next day anyway. The storm that comes next is something else. Waves as tall as buildings. The ocean flings the lifeboat toward the sky and drops it into valleys so deep it feels like falling out of the world. And in one striking moment, Pi actually laughs through his terror, daring the ocean to do its worst. When it finally dies, morning brings calm water at a brutal price. His raft is destroyed, his supplies washed away. From now on, Pi lives inside the lifeboat with Richard Parker. Full-time, no retreat. Just a boy and a tiger, in a space the size of a large bathroom. And somehow, they manage. And then comes the moment nobody sees coming. Land. After months of open ocean, Pi spots a floating island. Lush green, dotted with freshwater pools, crawling with thousands of small animals that show no fear of humans. He steps onto solid ground for the first time in months. He eats, drinks, heals. Even Richard Parker explores with something like peace. For a few days, it feels like everything might finally be okay. And that's exactly when Pi notices the details that don't add up. The place feels too perfect. One evening, as the sun goes down, the freshwater pools turn acidic, the fish in them start dying, and the plants seem almost predatory in the dark. Uneasy, Pi peels open one of the island's strange fruits, expecting seeds. Instead, he finds a human tooth. The horrifying truth hits him. This island isn't a sanctuary. It's a trap. It lures living things in with everything they need, then slowly consumes them in the dark. Whoever came here before never left. So before sunset, Pi is back on the lifeboat with all the food he can carry. And here's the haunting detail. Richard Parker follows without resistance, as if he already knew. The island vanishes behind them, and Pi walks away having learned the hardest lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous places are the ones that look like paradise. By the time Pi finally spots a real coastline, he barely recognizes himself. Older, thinner, hollowed out by months at sea. The waves carry the lifeboat gently onto a quiet beach, and the movie saves its most heartbreaking moment for last. Richard Parker climbs out first. Pi, too weak to stand, watches him step onto solid ground, shake himself off, and pause. And Pi waits. After everything, the storms, the starvation, the nights they kept each other alive, he waits for a look back. A goodbye, any sign it meant something to the tiger too. Richard Parker walks into the jungle and disappears, without looking back a single time. And Pi breaks down and weeps, not because he expected more from a tiger, but because he needed more from something, and that tiger was the only something he had left. Now here's the twist. Pi is rescued and questioned by investigators trying to understand how the ship sank. He tells them everything. The animals, the tiger, the island. They don't believe a word. A boy surviving months with a Bengal tiger? Impossible. So Pi offers them a second version. And this one has no animals at all. In this version, the survivors were people, and as the days dragged on, fear and hunger and desperation stripped away their humanity, leading to violence and death, until Pi was the only one left alive. No magical island, no flying fish, just human beings at their absolute worst. The room falls silent, because suddenly the pieces line up too neatly. The zebra, the hyena, the orangutan, the tiger. Each one might really have been a person. Maybe Richard Parker was the most savage part of Pi himself, the part that did whatever it took to survive. Neither version can ever be proven. So the investigators ask one final question. Which story is true? And Pi doesn't answer. Instead, he asks his own. Which story do you prefer? They admit, the one with the tiger. Pi smiles quietly and says, and so it goes with God. Because that's the genius of this ending. One story is bearable and one is not. One gives all that suffering meaning. One turns a nightmare into something a person can actually carry for the rest of their life. And isn't that exactly what we all do with the worst things that ever happened to us? Life of Pi was never really a movie about a tiger. It's about the stories we tell to survive our own pain, and about faith, not as the absence of doubt, but as the choice to keep believing there's meaning in the chaos. Pi survives the Pacific because he refuses to let the ocean have the final word on his story. And here's the thing, a story this good deserves more than one watch and goodbye. So before you do anything else, tap that subscribe button right now. Pi survived 227 days on the open Pacific with a tiger and never gave up. Subscribing takes half a second. Don't be like that cargo ship that sailed right past him and never noticed. Notice this channel, hit subscribe, and stick around, because the next breakdown is even better. Now, one last thing, and I really want your answer. Which story do you actually believe? The one with the tiger, or the one that's almost too dark to say out loud? Drop it in the comments. On this film, your answer says more about you than you might think, and I read every single one. See you in the next one.